Alrighty, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Kraus. I'm the VP of Products at Shippabo. I'm standing in today for James Ford Hutchinson, who is our VP of Operations and guru of all things logistics, who unfortunately had a family emergency, so he's currently on a plane off to Europe right now. So you'll be working with me. We're going to talk today about really beyond the container rate, how to actually apply AI to furniture supply chains. But I thought we would start with a little bit of an overview of Shippabo and our company and what it is we do. So Shippabo is an industry-leading mid-market digital freight forwarder. We're an NVOCC. We were founded back in 2014 by Nina and Sam Liu, a sister and brother team. Nina is our CEO, Sam is our CTO. And sort of the ethos of the company was when Nina realized that the software that was available in the market was really not adequate for her needs as an importer. That's really what brought Shippabo to life, and Sam joined, and the rest has been history. Through the past decade, we've built quite a specialty in imports, although we do work globally. We work especially with Asia to US freight, and we have offices over in Asia, several offices, which is part of our secret sauce, the fact that we go all the way back to origin and have great relationships that help us there. We also have an award-winning AI-based digital platform that our customers use and which we also use internally. We'll be talking about that a bit today. And although we do work cross-market in a lot of different verticals, we do quite a bit of furniture. We have several of our major customers are furniture companies. Since we do around 100 furniture shipments per year, probably 3,000 or 4,000 TEU. So we are going to talk about AI, but I wanted to start with gorillas. Does anybody in the audience recognize this image? Okay, cool. So way back in 2024, in April I believe it was, the company here, InspiringDesigns.net, which had a blog, in the days before AI really took off, was playing around with an AI. And this particular blog covers new kinds of furniture, new ideas for furniture. And I guess one of the things that the AI kind of hallucinated as they were working on it was this couch. And they put it up on their blog, kind of with everything else, and they put it on their TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And it absolutely blew up. 13,000 likes in the first hour, over 1 million shares in the first 4 days. They were enthralled. They never had that kind of traffic before. And they noticed it. But you know who else noticed it? Was this company, Sunyao Furniture, over in Foshan in China. And they looked at it and they said, well, 1 million shares, that's one heck of a signal. How hard could it be for us to build this? And would people buy it if we did? So they took this image and they put it up on their TikTok, on their Instagram, and they said, how much is this worth? I don't know. What's it worth to us? Let's try $9,995. They put it up there. And they sold a ton of them. They got a ton of orders. So they literally went into the gorilla couch making business, and they designed this thing, and they built it. As Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it, right? And much to their surprise, this became a very important product for them. And they started to customize it. As they pushed it out across their marketing, they wound up making customizable noses, they wound up doing different colors, and by the fall of that year, their competitors were building gorilla couches as well. And across the past 24 months, this has actually become an entirely new market category. And if you actually go up to Alibaba today and just type in gorilla sofa, you'll see you can get anything. You can get sheep, you can get gorillas, you can get pandas, you can get horses. It's a whole new thing. And I'm just kind of tickled by this because starting with this one digital image, this one AI image, that created the demand for kind of a whole new industry, which is interesting. So the bottom line of this is AI can actually create demand in some function. So AI, aside from digital gorillas, is good at some things. It's also terrible at others. As most folks, how many folks in here have used AI prompts and things like that? Okay, pretty much everybody. So you probably know AI is really good at summarizing, condensing things, doing draft letters, pulling messy inputs together and aggregating things. It's pretty good at forecasting probabilities. If you give it a lot of data, we use it this way at Shippabo. It's pretty good at pattern recognition. If you give it big databases, it can extract information really, really efficiently. It's not always right, but it does that pretty well. And of course, it's good at digital gorillas, right? So it's really cool, but it's not necessarily that dependable. It is not good at unconstrained execution. If you give it a request to do something, if you don't give it enough context, it may not give you the right answer. And it's really good at ignoring the really obvious things. It's not necessarily good at calculating or reasoning things. It can only give you sort of what it was able to aggregate and pull together. And frankly, it just doesn't know what it doesn't know. And that's really what leads technically to those hallucination issues. And so at Shippabo, kind of our rule of thumb, both in terms of how we use it and how we include it in our software as a freight forwarder, is we use AI to compress information and to surface important signals that we can use to draw conclusions. But then ultimately for execution, we use humans and we use systems of record, SOPs and things like that, our existing rule set, to actually execute for our customers. Now, that's where AI is today. I'm not saying that won't change tomorrow. Probably will in some measure. We can, figure out what timeline that's going to be. But as of today, that's kind of how we use it. So why is it important to have this conversation right now? Well, furniture importers, you folks, run some of the most capital-intensive, timing-intensive, margin-intensive businesses in the entire retail world. 75% of the furniture imports that come out of China come from one area, which is the Foshan and Dangguan areas. The average transfer time for a lot of this is between 30 and 60 days, typically about 40 days from China to North America. And up to 30% of the cost is going to be annual carrying cost of inventory. So you're facing a lot of potential carrying cost. So given that AI can actually bring optimization benefits, the question isn't so much like, can AI help, but much more so, how can it help, where should it help, and where is it going to fall down, and what do we actually have to avoid? And that's very much the challenge. So if you look at AI kind of in logistics today, one truth that emerges pretty quickly is that most freight forwarders like us are using it for back-end cost reduction. It's good for extracting information out of PDFs and building bills of lading and things like that. So everyone is experimenting and developing methods of doing that faster and faster, and that certainly saves some time. It saves quite a bit of manual work and stuff like that. So the back office applications of this are numerous in certain ways, but you have to be careful. From a customer-facing perspective, you just kind of go in and explore shipping software, international shipping software, supply chain management software. You'll see that there's a great focus on predicting freight rates and where things are going to go. That's because that's the magic, right? That's where everybody wants to see what's going to happen next. And if you do that, it's really easy to measure and to showcase the savings, to say, hey, I got an average of $60 off per container, right? Which is an important thing to be able to do with the CFO, breathing down your neck for savings on a quarterly basis. At Shippabo, though, what we've learned is that the container cost really isn't the cost. It's part of the cost, but it's not most of the cost, and it's frankly not even the most important cost. There's a lot of other dimensions to the ultimate product of delivery and arrival and landed cost, which only relate partially to that. So you have your inventory cost, the safety stock that you keep on hand, the warehouse lots that are taken up by having too much inventory. There's the stockouts, there's the missed promotions by not really knowing when things are going to land. There's the execution cost itself, demurrage and detention because of lack of planning or because of changes that happen even after the product has left overseas. And those factors, when you add them together, wind up being a lot more serious, on average, than the actual container cost. Typically, that's 15 to 20%, but AI's true leverage, and what we're going to talk about today, really relates to the other part of this equation, that 70 to 80% that really affects the bottom line and that really shows up on the quarterly P&L. So the way AI plugs into the supply chain today, there's really three dimensions to this. And the first one of these that you all are very familiar with already probably is the chat prompt. This works really well for summaries, for creating documents, for translations, for analysis, for things like that. But it is fairly limited. When you actually use it, it's not going to do the same thing twice. Has everybody noticed that? You don't really get the same result even like 5 minutes later if you give it the same prompt, right? Exactly. The evolution speed of AI right now is so high at the data level, at the functional level, at the I/O level, that everything is changing. So generating consistency in terms of result is very, very difficult. But that doesn't mean it's not useful. It can be, because a lot of the functions themselves will be consistent, text extraction and things like that. So that's a handy thing to use. The second dimension is what we and our competitors offer, what you can get from the Shippabos of the world. So the ability to use AI to manage shipments and to do predictions, to build health scores, and to add other insights in and around shipments that can really, improve the economics of your work. The third dimension is what are called application programming interfaces, APIs, which is a fancy term for basically the digital connections between platforms. Typically, the reason for those is the transfer of data. And there are opportunities now to plug AI engines, external engines, ChatGPT and Anthropic, Claude, and others, Microsoft's and Google's Gemini, into ERPs and into shipping platforms. It is absolutely possible. But IT offices are taking their time on this, right? They're not going too fast. There's still a lot of unknowns. It's not really clear what the AI has the right to do quite yet, and so everybody's being very careful, very conservative about what data they're allowing this access to. And so it's very much, in many industries, it's still very much deep in the POC stage, and there's not a lot of trust there yet. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Ultimately, as these use cases do codify, document recognition and customs filing, other things, other places where AI can be used, this will appear more and more as something that can be, that is a priority. So at Shippabo, what we've been working on for the past 4 or 5 years is essentially an AI-based tracking and prediction system, which we call Shippabo 4C. And this is, to us, probably the best single implementation, the most useful implementation of AI that we've seen so far. What 4C does is essentially bring together all of these different, probably 30 or 40 different signal inputs. So the shipment milestones, the vessel status, the terminal data, lane information, historical information, the current weather, the current state of the different ports involved, the age of the carrier itself, and so on. Blends all of those together to make a prediction both of the ETA of the shipment and also set a health score on the lane. So we actually have insight as to not just what's happening, but what's actually going to happen. So this gives you a continually updated view of the shipment as it leaves the factory, and as it's on its way all the way over to the warehouse or to the 3PL. There's a lot of benefits to this. The first one is being able to calculate the ETA within a finite period. Most importers look somewhere in 5 to 7, sometimes up to 10 days, worth of uncertainty as to when product actually lands. With 4C, we're able to bring that down to about 48 hours, 90% of the time, which gives a much, much closer view as to when things are going to land and allows much more concise planning, which, as we'll say, can really save money and capital. Lane health scoring. So the ability to assign a reliability score that includes exception rate and dwell time and volatility per lane can help you make future decisions as to which lanes you choose. And that's really, really important because the way that you're going to approach it is very different if you're shipping white t-shirts or if you're shipping kind of a time-critical product that's meant for a marketing launch. So we can deliver that kind of insight as well. Risk alerts, really, really important. It's good to know whether the shipment is slowed down or where it is if it's late, but it's also important to know what's going to happen later on down the line because, again, we're talking about a 30 to 40 day shipping timeline, so you want to know what's going to happen in the future. Using a prediction system like 4C, milestone over milestone, we can actually provide alerts to our customers as to what's going to happen later on to allow them to plan ahead. Perhaps to change their partner for drayage, perhaps to choose another mode of transport if they need to, rail rather than truck, whatever it might be, but they know what's going to happen. They can even alert the customers. And then shared context. These platforms are very powerful because platforms like ours allow all of the participants in a shipment to see what's actually going on and to know what the current ETA is and what the predicted ETA is going to be. And that's really powerful. So you're always all on the same page and you can communicate about that. So this is a really great system. Our customers count on this tremendously. It really is a major business signal for them in terms of how they actually handle and manage their logistics, and it's actually added a lot to the savings that they've been able to generate on average in the past couple of years. So how does this fit in the supply chain? Well, let's take a look. There's generally about 12 steps, which I'll walk through really fast, in your typical shipment, and AI, both at a prompt level and also at a platform level, really fits into most of those. So let's talk about 3 things. Let's talk about actions, what happens at every step, prompts, which is what you could do using Claude or using ChatGPT or something like that, and also what we could do inside of the platform. So first thing, you issue the PO, right? So that confirms your SKUs, quantities, prices. You can do a lot of stuff here with a chat prompt. You can summarize documents. You can translate spec sheets into another language if you need to. You might even be able to, drag and drop a bunch of emails into one of these and have it help you create the PO or at least get the bulk of the work done. That's pretty handy. On the platform side, in addition to starting to track things and kind of gathering data, we can also estimate the manufacturing lead time. So we know approximately when the booking is going to happen. So we can look forward a little and go, this is probably going to be about 6 weeks. So this is probably the range of booking that we're going to happen. And that relates to being able to book in terms of capacity and in terms of price and being able to get the best price that we can for our customers. So that's really, really good to know. The production side, there's not too much to do. When you get to the point where you actually have a cargo ready date, though, things start to take off. At this point, in addition to whatever work you're doing inside the prompt, you can always do email summaries and things. This is the point where we can actually get our hands onto what we call the CRD to ETD estimate. And this is really important. This is essentially the time between the cargo being ready on the ramp of the factory to the point where it's actually going to be departing by ship from the port. And that's a very important period. It's not a long period. It's typically a couple of days. Depends if there's rail or truck or whatever else is involved with that transport. But it's a very important metric because this is the part that tends to vary a lot. So we work with our customers to really optimize this and report to them using AI in terms of exactly how many days that is and how they can optimize the production cycles from the factory along with the departure date of the actual ship. And then there's the booking side. This is where things actually get exciting. When you make it up to booking, this is the point where the carrier is reserving the space, the lane is confirmed, the route is confirmed, the CRD cutoff is identified. Now, on your side, you can use AI to compare quotes. You can take quotes from a couple of different vendors, put them in, compare them. You can also kind of get an idea of quality levels and options and probably get some history pretty easily from the chat prompt, from the LLM rather. About the history of that lane and whatever else. On our side, this is where we actually start tracking. So once that information comes to the carrier and the carrier publishes the actual information to us, then we can actually identify an ETA and we can assign a health score. And this is the point at which we say, okay, your shipment is here. This is where it's starting, right? And here's where it's going to be. So that's where we actually start this loop. The product gets trucked to port. There's not too much to say there. On our side, part of the secret sauce at Shippabo is that we actually have our overseas offices which have built those local relationships, which it turns out are really, really important with suppliers and with the ports to essentially make sure that things function really, really seamlessly. From there, you get to origin and loading. So this is where the containers get gated in, the bill of lading is issued, and so on. Again, you can use the prompt for summarizing docs because this is the point where you start getting more and more documents kind of piling up in your inbox. And in our case, you can bring those into the platform of Well, of course, and manage those. You can also use it consistently you can use it to check for inconsistencies in the PO. That's one of the most powerful aspects of AI from a prompt perspective in this whole cycle is being able to constantly verify against the original PO and make certain that the 150 things that are listed on this bill of lading or whatever else it is match the original PO and that everything is as expected. That verification is a really powerful thing. On our side at this level, the vessel status has been captured, so we're starting to show documents to the right people from inside the platform. And then the ship leaves. And not a lot of exciting things happen for the next 20 days. It's kind of the quiet period, and our platform kind of goes, yep, still coming, every 6 hours or so. But as the ship gets, I think it's 6 days away from arrival, things start happening. So we generate the arrival notice. We're going to automatically kick off the ISF filing and provide the required customs information. As part of that, one place where we see AI being used quite a bit now or starting to be used, I should qualify that, is to make recommendations for HS classifications. It's a very powerful idea. It's also an idea you have to be very careful with because if you get those HS classifications wrong at volume, it can be unbelievably expensive. So at volume, if you call something the wrong thing and if you get called or audited on that, it is a very big deal from the CBP, from the Customs and Border Patrol perspective. So AI can make those recommendations for you, but it has to be done with great care. There's a few platforms out there that are doing this now. I don't recall the names off the top of my head, but they are getting better and better at doing this, and they are quite trustworthy. We also, on our side, confirm the demurrage risk. So we start to look forward and say, hey, what's the status of the port? What's the status of drayage? Is there a strike? Is there weather? Is there something going on? And at this point, we can really, again, provide alerts and things to let you know exactly what the status is going to be when you get to those points of transition. In general, with this kind of a supply chain, the tough part is really at the transitions. Like nothing happens when it's, unless an octopus eats your container, there's really nothing that's going to happen while it's on the ship on the way over. It's really when you get to the points of handoff on a loading dock or on rail where you start to have the problems. So we get to U.S. arrival, we discharge that, the containers go into the yard, we generate the documents, the platform generates the documents necessary for transfers and for drayage and for things like that, and we of course provide alerts for any kind of at-risk containers and those sorts of things. Customs clearance, a lot of this now is somewhat automated and goes through. Of course, we watch it very carefully. You don't really need AI for that. The mechanisms are all in place. CBP and the Customs and Border Patrol has great interfaces now that we and other vendors use to monitor what's going on and provide alerts to keep both the freight forwarder, such as ourselves, and the consignee aware of where the clearance status is and if there's any kind of an inquiry going on. Drayage, things move to the truck. We track that. We can actually show you where it is. And this whole time through, you're getting not just the ETA, which is being monitored and adjusted, but and the alerts relative to that. You're also getting the health score. So you can see the overall health of your shipment. That makes it doesn't matter so much if you have 3 shipments, but if, like us, you're sort of a mid-level company and you're dealing with, 20, 30 shipments at a time, being able to sort by health score and keep an eye on the difficult ones or the ones that are at risk is very, very important. So you get up to receiving, the product lands at a 3PL or it lands in your warehouse, what have you, the container gets unloaded, the SKUs get scanned, and it's interesting here actually, there's another point where you can use AI, you can use LLMs to reconcile any of the discrepancies against the arrival notice or against the original POs and things like that, so you can really keep an eye on that. Again, that's a good sort of one-off use, it's a drag and drop verification style thing so far, but it can be very useful. We keep the data from that shipment underneath just to make certain, and we'll use that for tracking in future shipments and our own predictions. And then retail and last mile. Again, you can use the LLM for reformatting some of that information if there's allocation information or other insights that you want to provide to your retailers or to your distributors. On our side, on a platform, we also then provide you with a really rich dashboard of exactly what happened during this shipment, measuring cost, measuring time, measuring value, as well as any custom KPIs that you might want to set up that are important for your finance or for your operations teams. And of course, we can generate reports. We can generate reports through the entire process, of course, on things. In fact, it's very easy to do. But here we can generate a final report that really shows you exactly what happened, where there might have been slowdowns, and even make recommendations as to better approaches sort of in your following shipments. So with that whole process kind of in mind, where does AI really, really help here? Well, the first piece is reducing inventory and carry cost. My background is mostly in technology and not in shipping, but coming into this industry, I've been amazed at how much the small percentages add up, and being able to shave 1 or 2% at volume off the amount of time that you have to consecrate to keep things in a warehouse makes an enormous difference from a financial perspective, because this is such a large cost basis for many, many companies. And so if you no longer have to buffer your stock around a 7 or 10 day wait time, but around a 2 or 3 day wait time, that means that there's a good chance that you can reduce the amount of capital you're using and actually stop burning as many warehouse slots. Reducing demurrage and detention. This is one of the reasons that our customers come to us really in the first place, is avoiding those two things. We've done some statistical analysis, by the way, of demurrage and detention, demurrage in particular. And there's kind of 3 rings, if you like. The first ring, which is like 95% of shipments, are perfectly okay. They're in the center and they leave the yard when they're supposed to. The ring outside of that is, if you like, the things that were a little bit late. They took too long because the truck broke or a tire blew or the driver didn't show up or something just went wrong. But there you're talking maybe 10 containers and $3,000, $5,000. Like, you don't want that to happen a lot, but it's not the end of the world. From there, it's an enormous jump financially. From there, if that's not the problem, if the problem is beyond that, it's not a $6,000 problem or an $8,000 problem, it's a $30,000 problem because the containers are in Zambia. and no one knows why. So that's the area where freight forwarders such as ourselves really focus to make sure that doesn't happen, because that next jump is a really, really big one. The same thing goes for just pure demurrage, where if it isn't caught in that second spot, then it becomes the third, and there's an enormous inflation of cost. And that's what we never want to see happen. So that's part of the reason, it's one of the biggest economic reasons that people implement a system like ours, is to reduce that risk. Increasing sales visibility. I'm particularly fond of this one because if you know what's arriving down to the SKU level, and we associate SKUs with containers with vessels. So we know exactly what is arriving on which vessel, literally right down to the pallet. And that really prevents stockouts, or it allows you to adjust your marketing as a function of what's really arriving and when, kind of regardless of what's happening. And then ultimately reducing markdown exposure, so avoiding these late arrivals that would really cause you to miss the selling window. So what's interesting to me is a lot of these things don't show up on the container invoice, but all of them show up in the quarterly P&L. And the ultimate gauge of the effectiveness of AI in your supply chains is really around the results it's producing at a financial level. Ultimately, all risk boils down to finance, right? So that's ultimately where this should be expressed. So a couple of other benefits I wanted to mention too. One of them is helping sales sell what's actually going to land. Knowing exactly which SKUs are where on the ocean so they can actually sell while it's on the water if need be is really helpful. We have a customer in New Jersey that actually does gym equipment. And we're always joking that we're kind of functionally their fulfillment partner because they sell so many things. They literally just come off the boat and go straight to their distributor because they're doing so well, they're growing so fast that they never even make it into the warehouse. So it's kind of like the ultimate just-in-time delivery method. So this kind of knowledge also helps you prioritize the quotes and the orders and things for things that are going to become available and arrive in time for certain things. You can also proactively flag customers if it's going to be late. And that's one of the things that, working with sales teams is the most empowering, I think, for operations to be able to say, hey, these SKUs are going to be delayed. Here's our best estimate. Here's what you can tell your customer. This is what we see currently internally, and here's the credibility behind that, right? And we know that our estimates and our ETAs and our AI estimates, our ETAs are being used for customers that way constantly. And then increasing the overall supply chain reliability and efficiency and empowering you to actually give carriers scores. When we quote for customers who want to bring a product to North America, what have you, we typically give a customer 3 different quotes that reflect different levels of quality. They might also be different levels of speed, but quality is often more of an important delineation. It's different if you're shipping white t-shirts, or again, if you're shipping something that's market critical or what have you, but being able to find what we like to call the right price for something is often much more important than the lowest price or the highest price. It's not so much about that. Like we saw earlier with respect to the containers, gauging the reliability the right way and having a good team behind you is, in practical business terms, sometimes much, much more important. As an importer, though, you can also look at the experience you're having, the lanes you're using, as well as the factories, of course, but the carriers you're using, what's working the best, what connections are the most seamless, which partners on the drayage side are doing the best job for you. That's really, really important. And systems like ours will show you all of those things, not just in terms of probability, but in terms of concrete numbers and results that you can pull into a spreadsheet and then demonstrate and assign a risk value to and actually calculate the benefit of. You can also track changes because carrier and drayage combinations can increase in quality or degrade in quality, especially as a function of unforeseen things, as a function of weather, as a function of time of year, season. Maybe in peak season, certain drayage partners just don't work as well because they don't have enough drivers working for them. Those things really happen. So this also allows you to look at those and make those estimations and see those in a spreadsheet. So how do you implement AI? In this case, we've looked at a lot of details, what it looks like in terms of benefit, what it looks like in terms of process. So really 3 steps. I think the first thing we typically do with our customers, we say, get the data honest. Consolidate your existing shipment data into one source of truth, a platform like ours, but not into a spreadsheet. Pick a couple of lanes that are the most painful, that you really want to fix. And then establish your normalized baseline, like the KPIs that are the most important, right, that you struggle with, the ETA, the carrying costs, stock out rate on certain products, or coming from certain manufacturers, what have you. So that's a starting point. From there, turn on the visibility, enable tracking, enable health monitoring, and understand what those changes are. Bring those predictions into some of your sales and marketing meetings. Offer that data, upstream, downstream a little bit into the commercial side, and see if the extent to which that can really help your sales and marketing teams, if they have those insights. And then gently, gradually, explore reducing some of your safety stock, a couple of percent, and see if that makes sense. See if you can do that without stressing, without creating too much risk in the supply chain. And if you can, that's money that you can save. Once you have the metrics there, explore expanding it. So expand that to other lanes, retire your spreadsheets completely. Introduce carrier and lane scorecards. It's a great discussion to be able to have as well with the freight forwarders such as us and say, hey, here's the lanes that I prioritize, here's the quality that I've seen working with these partners together. What do you guys see? Can you give me a quote for these? It starts a very healthy discussion about what you actually need and the price you actually need to pay in order to get to that level of quality. It's a much better conversation than about how many thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars in either direction it is per box. It's much more productive for you. You can also seek to align merchandising promotion calendar to your arrival windows. You can sync up, because you have a lot more data to work with, you can sync up with the marketing team, and then you can measure the improvement. And I think this is the most important part of this entire presentation is once you've done this for a quarter, once you've done this for 3 to 6 months even, look at where you were in terms of the original baseline, look at where you are in terms of what you're saving. And typically we see with customers somewhere between 1% and 5% of savings that they're able to generate with the efficiencies that this kind of a system brings them. So to wrap up then, AI is not going to ship your container for you, but it can add a tremendous amount of insight. It can give you a lot more leverage with the other departments in your organization, give you a lot better set of bases for speaking with the CFO and defending your own expenditure, and really understanding what the container truly costs you to get there. So the 3 steps again, start with a clear view of your pain points, map out your prioritized usage, implement visibility, and use prompts when it actually makes sense. But don't depend too much on that. Make sure you check your answers when the things come out for those big workflow blockers that are there. And then finally, measure how AI really impacts, really at a financial level, and see how that can actually help you save money. And then maybe take that money and buy yourself a Gorilla couch.